Hello, and welcome to a special celebration of the 401 Richmond Career Launcher Prize. My name is Jennifer Bogle, and I'm the Communications and Community Animator here at 401 Richmond, coming to you today from the third floor meeting room. We're thrilled you could join us today to explore the importance of fostering emerging voices through resource sharing and mentorship. Awarded annually, the Career Launcher Prize provides a pivotal opportunity for an emerging artist to occupy a coveted 500 square foot studio for one full year here in one of Canada's most dynamic arts facilities. The Career Launcher Prize has been presented annually since the year 2000 as a way of providing support for research and experimentation at a critical time in an ascending artist's career. Past recipients have included Gareth Bate, Winnie Truong, and Aaron McKean, all artists that are still creating work here in studios at 401 Richmond. We have a jam-packed schedule for the 1 hour that we have you here with us. And off the top, I just want to acknowledge our wizard behind the screen, Manny Bogle. He's working as our Zoom technician today, and he's pulling the levers behind the scenes. Hello, Manny. Believe it or not, Manny and I are not related. Manny actually comes to us highly recommended from Visual Arts Mississauga, where he works to facilitate their Zoom meetings and webinars for their programming and education departments. If you need Manny's services in the burgeoning field of online gatherings, you'll find his Instagram handle on our closing slide at the end of today's hour, or you can reach out to us at 401 Richmond in any way that suits you and we'll connect you with Manny. Also, we're recording this session, so please check back soon on our website, social media feeds, and YouTube channel to find that recording. You'll also find those handles on screen at the end of this event. And to kick things off today, we'd like you to enjoy this 45-second video that was recorded and produced by Cheryl Rondeau for 401 Richmond, with our current Career Launcher recipient, Miles Ingrassia, and Carol Chong, our 2018 recipient, talking about their experience in the Career Launcher studio at 401 Richmond.
Career Launcher Prize is a one-year residency at 401 Richmond, and I've had the honor of being the 2018-2019 recipient.
And I'm the 2019-2020 recipient. So, I'm really looking forward to, getting the benefit of making artwork in this beautiful, iconic building in downtown Toronto. So, yeah, the community at 401, I think, is what really sets this space apart from a lot of other spaces. Immediately when you walk into the building, you're thrust into this really vibrant art world. And there's all of these shops with a focus on art and design and all these galleries. And, you get really immersed into the art world that sort of pours out of this building. Just to be a part of such a creative, environment and community, it just feels really, empowering as an artist.
Thank you, Manny. And so we'll begin our hour today by heading downstairs in 401 to the second floor, just beside the bridge that connects our north and south wings to the Career Launcher studio, where Miles is standing by to speak to us about his practice and show you what he has on the go in the studio right now. After that, we'll keep Miles close as we move over to William Huffman, 401's curator of special projects, who's standing by in his home office in Parkdale. William will lead our panel of esteemed arts professionals, including Anahita Azrahimi of the Toronto Outdoor Art Fair, or this year the Toronto Online Art Fair, and Bleiwas, independent artist and our 2017 Career Launcher recipient, and Gaby-Trotz, Open Studios Technical Director. William will speak with Miles and our panel about how vital and pivotal a space like the 401 Richmond Career Launcher Studio is to an ambitious artist working steadily to solidify their place in a challenging and ever-changing arts sector. After about 30 minutes with our panel, we'll move to the last item in our hour today, the announcement and introduction of our next Career Launcher recipient. You'll be hearing this news and meeting the new recipient before anyone else, with our public release going out just after this event. And so we'll move on to our studio tour. I'll just let you know about Miles. Miles Ingrassia is a Toronto-based painter and printmaker whose work explores identity, gender, memory, and coming of age. His current body of work examines the male figure and is influenced by his experiences growing up in Hamilton, Ontario, as well as reflections on the construction and performance of masculinity. I met Miles sometime around 2015 when he worked at Open Studio, the contemporary printmaking center that lives here on 401 Richmond's first floor. Miles came to Open Studio fresh from OCADU and quickly stood out as a talented and conscientious printmaker, and we very soon hired him to assist our senior printers with high-profile projects, including 2 screen prints with the late Inuit artist Tim Pitsiolak of Kingite, formerly Cape Dorset, as part of Tim Dorset's Dorset Fine Arts residency at Open Studio. And the list of prominent artists that Miles has worked with goes on and continues to grow as he solidifies his place as an accomplished printmaker. In 2019, Miles was not only included in the jurors' pick list for the Toronto Outdoor Art Fair, but was also awarded a feature booth in the untapped emerging artist section of the Artist Project Art Fair. And I understand he has had a very successful year at the Toronto Online Art Fair with all of his work in very high demand. I'm so pleased to pass the screen over to him now. Benny, over to Miles.
Great. So can we do camera swap to the other camera? Perfect. So why don't we back up? And we'll start over here. Yeah. So yeah, I think Jennifer did a really great job introducing my past work. And I'm just gonna start to talk about the new work that I've been working on since I've been in the studio. So, I've got a bunch of paintings hung up right now. 2 of them here on the wall on this unstretched canvas are like at various states of, this one is just started to begin. And this one's sort of like the really awkward just after that stage. And then, I've got 4 pieces hung up here that are more close to finished or, finished. So, I was really fortunate this year. I was awarded both an Ontario Arts Council and a Toronto Arts Council grant. So this work right now is sort of the, the beginning, and then hopefully, very close to what's going to be the end of that project. So building off of the work that Jennifer did a really great job describing, I'm still working within the same themes of masculinity and coming of age, but I wanted to sort of start to engage art history a little bit more directly with my work. So I got really into this Barbara Kruger quote and silkscreen piece from the 80s, where the text on it reads, "You construct intricate rituals to touch the skin of other men." And I became really gravitated with that idea. And I wanted to sort of dig in and investigate how young men today sort of engage in touch. But not only just touch, but also how they start to engage with intimacy and how these relationships start to get formed. And then also the idea of ritual and how that gets employed to mediate or facilitate male relationships at large. So, I've been working on paintings like this, a lot of stuff that starts to reference a lot of, historical works and contemporary masters that I really, have really dug into and really enjoyed looking at their work. So some like this are a little bit more direct, like the Caravaggio reference, I think is pretty clear if you've seen the painting. And then some of the other ones start to get like a little bit more indirect in their reference, paying really close attention to gesture and body lines, but, keeping everything in a really contemporary context. So all the people, are wearing contemporary dress. I think the compositions are starting to get a little bit more contemporary, at least in terms of my work. And, other important, I think, contemporary touchstones that really mark the age as being modern, like the cell phone and stuff like that. And, looking at these works, they start to, like I said, dig in with this idea of ritual and relationship and how they get mediated and facilitated. And I think when I started to dig into this type of research, it became really important to sort of like look at some of these digital communities, things found online or through cell phones or through group chats. So I think that this sort of like distance approach to relationship making has become really important for young males, young men today in the world. It's sort of like an opportunity for them to, be a little bit more vulnerable or be a little bit more intimate without, having to be so embarrassed all the time, or some of these other hurdles that sort of prevent young men from opening up. And then, some of the other ritualized behavior that I think a lot of young men fall trapped to. So, like in this even though this painting is still in its very early stages, you know, these bodies draped over top of each other. It's like a really intimate, almost loving pose and composition. But at the same time, you know, these are like three drunk boys passed out. There's like a little bit of humor to it. And I think humor is always a really important factor of my work, to not keep things so uptight and serious all the time. But, you know, to sort of find these spaces, these intimate, loving spaces that have this like underscore of the subversive to them. Yeah. Same thing with this one. Very much more early in the painting process. Okay, so we can switch back to the other camera now.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was wonderful to hear you speak about your work and see what you have going on in the studio right now. That was, it's nice to get out of our living rooms and actually see what you're creating in the studio and what you've been working on over the year. Miles is going to stay close by as we're about to move over to Parkdale and say hello to Mr. Huffman and our panelists. But let me first tell you about William. Your panel moderator, William Huffman, is an arts administrator, curator, educator, and writer with a history of extensive involvement on both local and international cultural fronts. William was executive director with the Inuit Art Foundation, coordinator of the Audience and Market Development Office at the Canada Council for the Arts, associate director with the Toronto Arts Council and Toronto Arts Foundation, and has held other leadership positions at the Blackwood Gallery, Arts Toronto, the Power Plant, Contemporary Art Gallery, A-Space Gallery, Canadian Art Foundation, and the Art Gallery of Sudbury. William is currently marketing manager at Dorset Fine Arts, a division of the West Baffin Eskimo Cooperative, and is an occasional instructor with the University of Toronto, the Toronto School of Art, and Visual Arts Mississauga. And so over to William and our panelists.
Well, thanks, Jennifer, for that very generous introduction. And yes, greetings from Parkdale. I'm still getting used to all of this Zoom stuff and virtual whatever. So forgive me if I tend to conk out at some point. So thrilled to be here today, spending time certainly with esteemed colleagues and of course those of you who are joining us in the audience. And I've been involved with 401 for many years, working on a number of projects, as Jennifer said, curating special projects. Career Launcher certainly is one of my favorites. It is so important and so unique as a program, and I think quite inspiring, and has certainly inspired other programs of similar nature. And you know, a big thank you to 401 Richmond, for letting me participate in these things and hanging around in general, but also for what you do not only with this project, but with the many others that animate and welcome people into the space. And again, Jen, thanks for being our MC and organizing all the extended team over at Urban Space. And I'm going to preempt your thank you, Jennifer, and extend the thanks to Beanfield for making all of this happen. And if anybody knew what we were doing between 9 a.m. today and now to get this up and running, and for Miles to do that terrific studio tour. So thanks, Beanfield. And of course to our panelists, who I now have the distinct pleasure of introducing. So Miles will participate on the panel, but I'm not going to bother introducing him. He's done, Jennifer's done a great job, and certainly we've had the privilege of seeing what he's been working on. So I will move on to our other panelists. Anahita Azrahimi, Executive and Creative Director, Toronto Outdoor Art Fair, a seasoned arts manager. Anahita leads the Toronto Outdoor Art Fair team, building robust partnerships with community and implementing essential new programs for artists and the public, including a shift to the Toronto Online Art Fair for 2020, which is amazing. Congratulations on that shift. Aside from that, she serves on boards, committees, and juries with Creative Trust, Theatre Direct, Dance Makers, the Arts Management Program at Centennial College, WE Festival of Arts and Culture for early years, Modern Time Stage Company, I'm going to continue a little longer, Cultural Pluralism in the Arts, Movement Ontario, Design TO, Dora Maver Moore Awards, Ontario Arts Council, and Visual Arts Mississauga. Pretty impressive, Anahita. Ellen Blaiwas, as the 2017 Career Launcher Prize recipient, Ellen came to 401 with an MFA from York University and a Master's of Architecture from McGill University. Currently based in Toronto, she's recently exhibited at Robert McLaughlin Gallery, Idea Exchange, and Angel Gallery. Ellen's participated in artist residencies at the Norris Foundation in Brooklyn, Robert McLaughlin Gallery, this is a tricky one, Takt Kunstprojekt Traum in Berlin, Artscape Gibraltar Point, and the School of Arts in New York. Her practice has been supported through grants and awards from the Canada Council for the Arts, Ontario Arts Council, Toronto Arts Council, and the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada. Anna Gaby-Trotz, Technical Director, Open Studio Contemporary Printmaking Center in 401 Richmond Street. Just to let you know that the Toronto Outdoor Art Fair is also housed, its administrative office is housed at 401 Richmond Street. With an MFA in printmaking from the University of Alberta, Anna has gone on to build inner-city arts programs in Edmonton, developed arts programs with rural LGBTQ2S+ youth, and worked for University of Guelph and OCAD University. Anna manages Open Studio's 6,000 square foot printmaking facility located, as I mentioned, at 401 Richmond Street, and facilitates its education and residency programs. So that's an introduction to our panelists. So we're going to get right into it. The way that we structured this is I'm going to pose a question, an individual question to each of the panelists, and then we have two general questions that we're going to allow everybody to respond to. And so I thought, Miles, since you were the sort of officially last one to speak doing your studio visit, I thought I'd give you the first question. And so here goes. You've given us a terrific illustrated overview of the work that you've been creating over the last year in residence at 401. Wondering if you could provide some general observations about the Career Launcher Prize and perhaps some specific experiences that you might want to share with us.
Yeah, totally. I mean, for me, it was sort of like the perfect colliding of worlds because I do so much work at Open Studio already. And in the winter semester, I was also working at OCAD University as a contract printmaking technician. So, you know, everything was really close. And, you know, when everything's really close like that, it becomes really easy to sort of like jam all of your practices together. At least in terms of like being able to manage your time really well. So for me, it was great. I could come to the studio in the morning and then go work at Open Studio in the afternoon and then come back to the studio or be at OCAD and pop over here. And I think it's like those little spans of time that end up accumulating to being really helpful. I mean, like getting like a 10-hour day is great as well. But, you know, if you can pop in for just even like 2 hours in the morning and then another 2 hours in the afternoon, it just keeps you regular and going. And then aside from that, you know, the sheer convenience of it, being in a building that has so much arts and culture happening and so many artists and designers and arts professionals all in the same place, you know, it's really helpful, at least for me, for keeping my practice going. You know, like being able to work in the studio in the day and then, you know, head down to one of the many galleries and start to get to know some of the gallerists and start to chat with some of the artists that are showing there. And other things like being able to participate in Nuit Blanche at 401, you know, just like so many exciting opportunities that just sort of happen. I mean, not that they just happen, you have to sort of like be going out and doing them and making the effort, but it's so much easier to make that effort when, you know, such a welcoming and inviting community. And I think that's one of the unique things that 401 Richmond provides, is this really welcoming, inviting community of artists and designers and arts professionals, et cetera, that just makes it easy to be a part of the art world. Because the art world can otherwise be such a, you know, a difficult place to break into sometimes. Especially like for me coming up in like a working class family in Hamilton, I didn't really have very much exposure to art growing up or going to galleries or anything like that. So I definitely experienced like a little bit of culture shock coming out of university and just sort of like trying to fit into that world. But then you find out through places like 401 that the world is not as big and scary as it needs to be or seems sometimes. And it just makes everything a little bit easier to deal with.
No, that's great. And I mean, I think that this culture shock that you mentioned is probably something that everybody that comes out of the academic environment or a studio program, because of course there is, your reason for being in those programs is to be in the studio and to make art, and you have the motivation of instructors. So, you know, the idea that, you know, you're situated quite quickly in a way out of that, that teaching environment, that academic environment, into one that gives you the motivation, like having the access to the 401 Richmond Street family. And I think access is an important other thing that you mentioned, that, you know, this allows you, it's not as big and scary. I mean, the art world is big and scary, but it's not as big and scary when you've got the support structure that 401 can provide.
Yeah, and I mean, all of those community things are so important, but then also, I mean, the obvious one is the space itself in the studio. And having such a large, generous space has like really allowed me to work a lot larger. And through working a lot larger, I've been able to like adjust my practice into different kinds of strokes and experiment with a bunch of different stuff that I maybe wouldn't have been able to. I mean, the studio I had before this one coming out of York was just like a tiny little, I think it was like 3 feet wide by 6 feet back. I could only ever work on one smallish painting at the time, which is challenging. But here, you can have everything sprawled out. And again, just being able to like take those little breaks where you go outside and chat with another artist in the building or a neighbor or something. It just makes everything feel a lot more comfortable and easy to deal with.
Thank you so much, Miles. And Ellen, I'm going to call on you next. And as a past recipient of the Career Launcher Prize, 2017 to be exact, and you're now 2 years after the residency. So can you tell us about how your professional life has been impacted by the year you spent at 401?
Totally, yeah. And I also just want to thank you for having me back with the 401 crew. Even though it's online, it's nice to be back in the building. Yeah, I like similar to what Miles and what you guys are describing regarding like, the post MFA, like the 2017 Career Launcher came immediately after my MFA for me. So it was really helpful in sort of getting things like immediately going again, which sort of led like, the 401 career launcher led into like a series of applications that ended up leading to like 2 other residencies. Which I've like just come out of now. Like it's basically been the full last 3 years. So yeah, like coming out of the MFA, I think for a lot of people, and I can say like certainly for me, like the thesis is a pretty intense aspect of it. And it takes a lot out of you. And it's really amazing like to come into the space of 401 and have a full year to sort of dedicate yourself to the work without having to necessarily always be like thinking about it linguistically, with a deadline at the end of an exhibition. So that really like helped me not really have a lull after the MFA and just kind of keep going. That was really important. And then also just in terms of community, like even though a year is a long time, it's also short enough that you feel like you have a deadline. So I was like, okay, I have like a year in this amazing studio. I'll probably never have a studio like this again. Like I need to have as many studio visits as possible and just like make use of the space. So I was also bringing a lot of people in and just having just a lot of conversations. I don't have a studio right now and you can't invite people to come talk the same way. So it was huge, both in terms of like the work, just a place to make the work and sort of hunker down without having to necessarily like justify it all the time, but also like in building community, both in 401 and in the larger Toronto community.
Yeah, so, and I think, and if I remember correctly, it was a similar situation with you where, because of the scale of the space that you were able to play with materials and scale in a way that would have been impossible. And I think, and also this notion of having access to professionals in the building who can continue that process of critique. And you do have like both figuratively and physically the space in which to have those discussions. I think that's a very important part of the way that this studio supports the artists.
Totally, yeah.
Okay, cool, well, thank you. And Anna, Gaby-Trotz, Open Studio is a critically important organization generally within artist-run culture and is specifically vital to the printmaking community. And so what are some of the ways that Open Studio supports creative practices, particularly those of emerging voices?
Yeah, so Open Studio has been in existence. This is our 50th year that sort of got a little bit cut short with the COVID crisis, but we're a contemporary print center. And one of the parts of my job that I really love is bringing in emerging artists, and we offer a year at Open Studio for an emerging artist who is a recent graduate from college or university, and they can come into the studio, they get mentorship, they get a show in the gallery at the end of it, they take education classes, and the idea is really to bridge that gap again between coming out of school and becoming a practicing artist in Toronto. and a lot of our artists, they find just a great deal of community at Open Studio, and they're able to talk to other recent grads, talk to established artists as well. We just finished in March an Inuit artist creative residency with Dorset Fine Arts and WBEC, and we had Cove Poodlat come down and create 2 large screen prints in the studio. And we're hoping to do the same this year with an emerging artist, Ulusi Sila. And so being able to collaborate in the space with other artists and take people through the medium of print who maybe have not connected with it or haven't been able to work as large scale necessarily, that's something that Open Studio really supports. We work a lot with Miles, that was mentioned, and being able to collaborate again with you know, an artist just finishing a master's degree, doing the Career Launcher Prize, and to be able to bring him into the studio and see his skills develop that's been a really amazing part of my job at Open Studio.
I guess, and that's that skills development side of things, and the bridge, and you know, a first residency and a first exhibition for these artists, these emerging voices that have, you know, are just out of school. You know, I guess you then see a lot of these people become permanent part of the Open Studio family, and I think that's an important part of building that kind of capacity, and then I guess graduating those candidates into professional life in the print.
Yeah, for sure. And it provides a lot of really good work for artists in Toronto. And emerging artists will move up through sort of assisting a printer, and then, you know, Miles has become a full-fledged collaborative printer at Open Studio, and he says no to nothing, which is great because I bring him in on all sorts of complicated projects. And it's really, yeah, it's so great to see that skill set emerge, and to be able to offer people, you know, education and skill sharing in Toronto, either free to emerging artists in our scholarships or at a really, really affordable price in Toronto.
Thank you, Anna. Now, Anahita. So we talked about the very exciting news that it was a huge success once again, the Toronto Outdoor Art Fair, even though it was entirely online. So big congratulations about that. The fair's always featured a very robust emerging and student artist component. So can you tell us more about that initiative and why it's an important part of the fair?
I think this is a tradition that goes back to the early beginning of the fair, which is 59 years ago. And I think the word on the street was always for Toronto Outdoor Art Fair because of the reputation it had as a platform of discovery. So people, collectors, art lovers, you know, curators, stylists, designers would flock to Nathan Phillips Square to get their first, first dibs on works of emerging artists. And this kind of like dates back before the age of Instagram, websites, you know, all those new platforms of discovery where that kind of like face-to-face and direct engagement was very important to discover new talent. And I think this still continues at Toronto Outdoor Art Fair. It is a platform for discovery of emerging voices and emerging artists. And it is an ultimate career launcher as well, because every year we still hear tales of artists who launch their careers on a very high note at Toronto Outdoor Art Fair. And that's one of the beautiful stories that always emerges, and one of the strengths of the show. It's because of the legacy of the event that has been around for such a long time, and it has a very steady, loyal following of audiences. So it has created this kind of a fertile platform of an environment for great conversations that helps, you know, this discovery. And I think, you know, when artists participate in this, it's kind of like an accelerator. You know, we're very committed to nurture those kind of creative entrepreneurial skills in artists and emerging artists. And the minute they participate in the show, it's just like they have to really hone their skills of how to connect their work with the general public, because it's not only, you know, you come out of that zone that you're only creating or you're writing about your work, but connecting your work to the general public is a different kind of a skill set. And also connecting your work and conveying what you're doing to the general public outside the art world, and people who understand that language. Again, it's a you know, it's a very kind of like a unique skill set that over the 3 days that you're on site and you're talking to like 600 people a day, you have to sharpen those skills and like how to put your work in context and you know, create engagement, pique curiosity, avoid the art speak, all of those things that they teach you at art school, you have to drop it, because you just have to like get to the essence of you know, your creation process, which I think it's really beautiful when it happens. So you just see kind of a growth after in artists that we have after they participate because of that engagement. And I think a lot of transactions also happen. It's not only the financial transaction that happens, that's kind of an external validation when somebody, you know, you've made the connection and somebody makes the commitment to take that work, you know, to buy that work, to invest, but which is really great, and it happens. But it's not only the sales, it's all those opportunities, networking opportunities that happen, that is really instrumental in like progression of the career. And you know, my favorite part of the whole you know, these are the stories that happen. I remember the first year when I started at Toronto Outdoor Art Fair, you hear about all of these tales, but once you see it yourself, that's when it's really, really exciting. We had this Kate McLean who was a student, and she was showcasing her thesis at her booth, and one collector bought 30 pieces, her entire collection. And then she became like a serious collector of her work, and she brought in more people. And within like a few months after her first showing, she had 30 dedicated collectors. And this year, after 4 years of participating at Toronto Outdoor Art Fair, she won the Best of Painting. And she's like really grown her network significantly. We had another artist again from OCAD, her last year that she participated, and somebody suggested her work to curators at Michael Gibson Gallery. A few months later, we see her work at Art Toronto. So those stories are really phenomenal. And I think, yeah, this is this kind of like the community coming together and building these opportunities and network opportunities for the artists and helping them launch their careers, launching them and then sustaining them over the years. That's the essence of what we do, I think, at Toronto Outdoor Art Fair.
That's all amazing stories. I want to just ask you quickly about, we talked to Miles earlier, and he was a participant in the online version this year, did very well. So congratulations, Miles. And so how has that transition looked for you guys? You know, I can't fathom it, but you've done a great job.
It was a wild success, and we didn't expect that, because, you know, you build a platform and you just, you still don't know what's going to happen. And I think those, the element of the community and that the legacy of the organization and the loyal following helped with the success of the fair. I think that was, it was the trust that has been between the organization and the community and our buyers and our followers, as well as our artists. So it really brought the community in ways that we didn't anticipate online. And everybody like kind of like held hands, and this, it contributed to the success. So when we opened the fair at 12 o'clock on the beginning, like on the first day, there were like 500 people cruising on our website waiting for the shop to open. And we were like, this is not like, this is bizarre. Like, this is amazing. And our artists sold over 500 pieces of work online, which is, again, for launching an online platform for the first time with no advertising budget, like really limited advertising budget. I think it was a fantastic experience. And I heard from Miles when I ran into him, and when he told me that he sold paintings, it's just like, it's exciting because you continue those conversations online as well. And to be able to kind of move those engagements online, it's yeah, it's great. And something that Miles also mentioned right now, I want to kind of add on to that. You mentioned something about the intimidation that is in the art world, and also like finding 401 being welcoming and inviting. And I think that value built into the how we do things, that also adds to how you know, the strength of how community comes together, because we pride ourselves at Toronto Outdoor Art Fair for being radically welcoming and inviting and not intimidating. And I think, you know, removing those barriers of access, which sometimes it's perception as well, and that also helps bring the community together. And I think that what makes art buying online also easier, because all of those perceptions are, and hierarchical perceptions are removed from the process, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. Thank you very, very much. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to do 2 general questions. And maybe what I'll do is, just to keep some order to this, I'll call on you individually just to give me your take on a response to the question. So first one, clearly we're all in agreement that support for emerging artists is important, particularly at a critical time immediately after departure from an educational context. I want to talk more generally about the structural challenges facing new creators or creators new to the scene, and to get your thoughts on ways those can be ameliorated. And I think maybe we can start with our 2 creators. You know, Ellen, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I mean, of course, one thing that comes to mind immediately in Toronto is, and I think, you know, especially through 401, we're all like hyper aware of this, is, you know, the Toronto real estate market is a huge challenge for artists in the city. Rent is quite prohibitive when it comes to, you know, the kind of space that you might need to make large work. And I guess just the relationship between, you know, the cost of rent and the opportunities available, like you start to become on par with cities like New York, where like Brooklyn more than New York, where, you know, so it starts to become like a real, I think a lot of artists are questioning like how it can be sustainable to be in Toronto as an artist, especially if you're making work that requires space. But then of course, structurally, I mean, we're seeing over the last, you know, months, we've been seeing folks really standing up and telling us, you know, many of the structural problems that individuals experience in, you know, in their own ways and each in our own ways. I feel, yeah, I think I should stick with talking to my own experience, but I think we're all like increasingly listening to that experience as well.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Miles?
Yeah, so I mean, I think for me, it's like sort of 3 facets. It's, you know, space is the most obvious one. It's so difficult to find, you know, like a dedicated space to make work. And it can be really tough to work out of your apartment. And I think there's like a lot of really good initiatives happening for the city. So, you know, opportunities like this that offer, you know, like a studio as a prize really help. But also some places like Akin where they do sort of like a, you know, like a lower cost of rental is really good. And I'm like happy to see them expand. You know, it seems like a new Akin pops up all the time. So I think that those are great opportunities. And then, you know, opportunities to show is like another one that I think it's just like great to make work in your studio. And, you know, some of those issues get sort of, you know, as we get thrust further and further into the digital age, you know, you can give yourself a platform and stuff like that, but then you have to deal with some other issues that go hand in hand with that. So, you know, it's nice to have galleries sort of at like that emerging level, without necessarily having to be like a rental gallery where you just like fill up the gallery with all your friends and stuff like that. Not that that's a bad way to show. I've done lots of shows like that. You know, like galleries are sort of like, you know, straddle that line where they're looking for emerging artists, but at the same time still trying to build up these careers and still be like a, you know, like a a place that tries to survive and make money and stuff like that. And then the third one, I think, is like employment opportunities that are in the arts. Because, you know, the more time that you can spend working in a creative field, you can keep honing all of your skills while still being able to pay your rent. Because, you know, I think like paying rent and being an artist are two things that are often at ends with each other. And, you know, it's like, I feel like talking about money when you're talking about art is always like, I don't know, some people feel weird about it, but it's essential, right? Like if you want to keep making work, you got to make the money to make the work, to pay the rent, to have the studio, and all those other things. They just sort of go hand in hand. So, you know, that's why I really like, you know, I feel really fortunate to have gotten those types of opportunities at a place like Open Studio. I feel like a lot of places are really reluctant to hire, you know, younger emerging artists and, you know, take that chance. And I mean, it's also a really competitive, they're always really competitive jobs to get. But, you know, just seeing creative industries, you know, being open to working with younger emerging artists and give them those opportunities to sort of like grow their career, I think is really important. You know, you see that all over the place where like a job, every single job posting needs like 10 years of experience, and then, you know, like 10 years of pre-experience, and you need to be like, you need to already have a career before you can start a career. So, you know, trying to break into, you know, as a young person into some of these jobs to sort of like keep your skill set honed and, you know, become a real creative professional, I think are really integral.
Thank you very much. And Anahita, do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, you did.
I think your audio.
Hi. I muted myself. There's a lot of background noise here. I have two little kids, that's why. So in terms of structural challenges, I think for me, it's, or from the perspective of TOAF, I think if organizations could join forces and work together and kind of like, you know, it would be great if we're solving the challenge of space and solving the challenge of showcase for emerging artists. Organizations who are facilitating those programs, they come together and work together, because often we are like working in our silos, trying to raise funds for one special little aspect of our program, and then we cannot create deeper impact because, you know, our resources are limited and they're not joined. So I think if that, for example, one of our award programs, it's our Best of Student Award, which is for an emerging artist. It's a cash prize plus a residency program at Artscape Gibraltar. It's a partnership with Artscape, as well as a showcase opportunity. So that creates kind of a 1 year solid, deeper impact. It's not just a cash prize, or it's just not a studio. So combining all of these elements, if more organizations come together and combine elements of their programming to create longer, because sometimes I think the length of time creates depth as well, you know, and then, yeah, something that is like, it goes over a span of like 2 years or even 3 years, because that's when you get to essence of work and to depth and growth. So I think that's the direction I would like. Probably I'm answering question number 2.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And finally, Anna.
Yeah. I mean, I think that one thing is like that open access to offer to emerging artists, and that's one of the things that we're really looking at Open Studio is a little bit more barrier-free access to space and mentorship and education. So opening up space, we're working with Vibarts who work in 401 and offering some education programming for their participants, in the hopes that then, you know, more people come back in to use the facilities at Open Studio who might not have even known we had 5,000 square feet back there. So really, like, the more young people and the more emerging artists we can get into the studio to really understand what printmaking is, the better. and we want people to come back. We offer, it's $100 a month for rental space with all of the equipment and technicians and materials. So keeping that price point, again, really affordable to practicing artists, because that is a real struggle, that you just have to work so much just to survive, that having a space that is actually usable and affordable for your practice, that's a really important thing for us to think about.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Anahita, since I think you began to with the second question, I'll call on you in a sec, but the second question is, I wanted to give everyone a chance to tell us more about what's on your respective horizons, some of the projects or initiatives on which you're working, and how those might address the subject matter that we've been exploring today. So please, Anahita, continue.
I think one of the things we would like to really kind of like dive into is just like strengthening partnership with organizations and institutions. Right now, we have this partnership with OCAD-U where we, showcase some of their recent graduates or students in Career Launcher program. But that again, it's a one-off showing, and some students don't return. And I really think we need to create, again, depth and kind of longer engagement. So a 3-year incubator program, and hopefully it's the wish list, and I'm sure it would happen. Working with studio spaces, professional development opportunities, combining our professional development opportunities with other organizations, and work on all the skill sets that an artist requires from the beginning, creating work, and also showcasing work, and then disseminating work at all those stages. How can we work together to create these incubator programs that are longer term and they have deeper, impact? So that's the wish list, and I think that's the direction we should go.
Sounds great. And Anna, I think you started talking a little bit about some of the things that Open Studio is working on. Do you want to elaborate on what's going on in the next little while with you guys?
Yeah. We're going to start up our visiting artist programs again. So Miles is going to start printing with Luke Painter, and also working with Winnie Trong for a subscription print to raise funds for bringing in more visiting artists, which is really generous of Winnie to do with us. We're also hoping to have another Inuit artist creative residency happen with a Lucy Sila in the winter, hopefully 2021. And we're looking again at kind of like what Anahita was saying, like working with other institutions, working with OCAD students in print and publications, again, to just keep print alive and vibrant and offer opportunities to as many emerging artists as possible this year.
That is great. Thank you, Anna. And Ellen, what about you?
I mean, I feel like it's been a really interesting time to be a person and to be an artist. COVID has, in many ways, the realities of isolation and COVID, of course, presents an incredible amount of challenge for artists and emerging artists due to like pretty much every opportunity being canceled. Like I was in the middle of residency in New York, like when this happened, like I came home, like canceled the next 2 months. So of course, like those are where the challenges arise. But I also think it's like an incredible opportunity to be like agile and to think about, how one's practice responds. As it happens, like I think a number of people are finding that themes of this really kind of historic time, they can be so broad that they resonate with many practices. For myself, I'm really interested in slowness and in sort of these like confrontation with oneself or solitude. So it's been a really interesting time to sort of see that en masse and kind of reflect upon that like over a duration of time, where like instead of having to sort of create that, like that's actually what the world has thrust upon us. So yeah, so I mean, it's been like a really historic and pretty fascinating time to be alive, to be an artist, to be thinking about how to even move forward with an art practice at this time. So in terms of like future things, I'm still like applying to future residencies. I find that residencies have been like a really helpful way of like doing this. They just solve so many problems, like kind of all at once. Yeah, but I am sort of really concerned for the next couple years, like as depending on how the economy goes, like we might lose a lot of funding, we're not. So I definitely have, I think like most of us, a lot of unknown in the next year.
Very, very good observations. Thank you. And Miles, you got the final word. Anything you wanted to talk about in closing?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm mostly just trying to keep the momentum going. So I've got to, wrap up my my current body of work for OAC and TAC. So I've got like a couple more paintings left to go. Same thing, just building off what Ellen said, like everything sort of got pushed back a little bit by COVID. Like I lost like a couple months of studio time, and then everything sort of like snowballs into stretching further and further out in terms of like the goal deadlines or like personal goals that you want to achieve. So, like my 2020 goal was to, try and find representation, but it's been tough without being able to like go places and see people and do things like that. So, I'm going to maybe push that back to 2021, but we'll see how that goes. And then, yeah, just like apply for residencies and, try and find a new studio, which probably won't be a problem. Like I thought about maybe going back to school and like trying to ride out the recession in an institution, because that tends to be like not the worst way to do things. But yeah, I don't know. I just want to like, for me, it's just like about trying to keep up the momentum that I've like built here. And I feel like, like I did have like my only other problem is that, the one thing, I should have mentioned this before, but like one of the most beneficial things of the space at 401 for me was being able to do photo shoots in my studio. Like I work photographically with like a lot of, but like I used to work with a lot of friends and self-portraits. And then this year with the space and the grants and stuff like that, I was able to hire models, which was really fruitful for me. And I sort of got really lucky. I did my photo shoot like a couple weeks before everything went like into lockdown. And now I'm starting to wonder, like, how can you responsibly do like a photo shoot with like 4 strangers, especially when they're like, like intertangling limbs and piling on top of each other. So it's sort of like a wait and see type thing. I think it's good to, like, as Ellen said, try and be really agile and practice your agility and stuff like that, and just try and be flexible for what the future holds. So, I've got a huge bank of photographs right now that I can sort of dig through and continue to make work. Like I've probably got like another like 20 paintings that I could continue working through if I really need to. Hopefully the world gets a little less scary before I have to make 20 paintings. But yeah, lots of stuff on the horizon. Probably try and do some residencies. There's like a few more awards I'm still got my eyes on. Try and do that type of stuff. Keep on doing the fair circuit. It's been really good for me. Have as many exhibitions as possible. Keep working open studio. That's my goals.
That is great. Thank you very much. And this kind of is wrapping it up for me. And I just want to thank all of you for participating. Fascinating. And it's always a pleasure and a privilege to hang out with you guys. So once again, thank you very much. And I guess back to you, Jennifer. I'm only 4 minutes over time, which is really unusual.
Okay, no problem. Great. Okay. So thank you, William. Thank you to all of our panelists for such an engaging and an inspiring discussion. You each bring so much to the table when talking about mentorship and resource sharing. We're almost done our hour celebrating 401's Career Launcher Prize, but we have one last and very important item of business. The time has come to announce the 2020 Career Launcher recipient. With a wealth of emerging talent in Toronto, choosing the recipient was no easy task. And so without further ado, I'm pleased to announce that the 401 Richmond Career Launcher Prize recipient for 2020 is Emily DiCarlo, which I think is Manny's going to bring up, and we'll all get to lay our eyes. There she is. Hello, Emily. Congratulations.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you. This is thrilling. Thank you.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'll give you everybody a brief bio on you. Emily is an artist and writer whose interdisciplinary work applies methodologies that often produce collaborative, site-specific projects. A recent graduate of the Master of Visual Studies at the University of Toronto, she is a 2019-2020 recipient of the Canadian Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council Scholarship. Emily recently exhibited at Sim Gallery in Reykjavik, Iceland as part of their Artist in Residence program, and at the 17th Triennial Conference of the International Society for the Study of Time in Los Angeles, California. Over the last few years, Emily has worked with a number of 401 organizations in various capacities, including Gallery 44, VTape, Fado, and Trinity Square Video. And so she'll be much farther ahead as she further integrates into the 401 community and leverages the extensive connections the building offers. Emily, could you speak to what this studio award means for your practice and your career moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Like I said, it's so wild to receive this. I mean, things are have been so uncertain for a long time. I am technically almost graduated. We just are pushing through the summer. Everything's on hold, of course, because of COVID. And it just seems over the years, my projects have gotten bigger, more immersive, so really experimenting with spatiality. And to get 500 square feet to do an experiment for a full year, it's wild. So I'm just very thankful. You know, 401, when I first landed in Toronto about 13 years ago, Gallery 44 was my first sort of touch point with the artistic community of Toronto. And ever since then, like you said, I've worked with so many people in that building. So now to be part of that community, it's really special. It's really near and dear to my heart. So I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Emily. We look forward to seeing you in the studio this fall. And so before we finish up today, I want to take a moment to say a few thank yous. I'd like to start, Manny, if you could take us to our next screen. There, I'd like to start with the incredible team at Beanfield, the telecommunications company that builds, owns, and operates the largest independent fiber optic network in both Toronto and Montreal. Beanfield has been close friends with 401 Richmond for a very long time. And so while we were not surprised, we were still greatly humbled by their generosity in supporting this event and this important residency. The Beanfield team quickly jumped into action, providing Miles' studio with high-speed connectivity for this event, allowing him to easily stream video for his talk and tour, both from a cell phone and his laptop. As Beanfield puts it, they're about building communities, not just networks. And so within the context of a community-oriented hub like 401 Richmond, they're a perfect partner. And then on to our next slide, Manny. I want to thank all of our panelists. We're so fortunate to have your insights today, and the team at 401 is so very grateful for the time you took to prepare and join us in this discussion today. Your passion and commitment to nurturing artists, navigating and complicated and complex cultural milieu is commendable and frankly inspiring. And thank you to Mr. William Huffman. Since joining the 401 community as A-Space's director in the earliest days of 401 Richmond, he has never been far away and always says yes when we ask for favors. As you have just experienced, he is unrivaled in his excitement, his engagement, his knowledge, and his unique ability to appreciate and encourage the strengths and abilities of everyone around him. And thank you to Miles Ingrassia. You've been an exemplary recipient of this pivotal award, keeping a consistent schedule, pushing your work forward, connecting with the community, and working with a level of professionalism one rarely sees in an artist at this early stage in their career. We've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you better. We'll watch you very closely as you move on from Studio 260 at the end of August. Lastly, thank you to everyone for attending. Please know that 401 Richmond has open to the public Wednesdays to Saturdays, noon to 5 p.m. Please come and see us with your face coverings soon, and have a wonderful summer, everybody. Thank you.